Okay, it is time for intro for drugs and crime. This is week 6. This is the final lecture, and I am recording this lecture earlier because I have a conflict for Monday evening at 8:30. So I wanted to make sure that you guys got the information, and you'll probably get this link earlier than you normally would. Instead of Monday night, you'll get it Monday morning. So I'm going to go ahead and cover the information that I would cover, and so let me share my screen with you. Okay, so we have reached the end of this course, and so you see that this is week 6 lecture, and you see it normally says would be 8:30 to 9:30 on Monday night, but instead I'm doing this late on Sunday night so that you will have it in advance. And then I'm going to cover the week 6 announcement. So I'm going to edit that so to make sure that you can see it. Let me edit it so that it shows up, because right now you won't be able to see it. You'll see it after midnight, but and I'll just change that to 9/8 and submit it. Okay, so now we can go back to the course home, and you will see it. Here it is. So the week 6 announcement is still showing week 5. And this week we're going to deal with drug-related criminal activity, treatment, and rehabilitation strategies. Chapter 10 of Drugs, Crime, and Justice, which I've already sent to you the PowerPoints for week 6, which is chapter 10, and deal with the treatment challenges related to opioid addiction and drug treatment and rehabilitation program. We've kind of been covering that the whole weeks, each of the previous 5 weeks. Discussion assignment is methadone clinics. Your initial post, of course, is due Tuesday night by 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. But note that your reply post is due Friday the 13th. Friday the 13th, your reply post is due. And then finally, you have a final exam, which is timed, and it is due Friday the 13th. As it says, all written assignments are due by Friday, August the 3rd. It says August 13th. Oops, should be September 13th. Let me correct that. Give me a minute. So we can edit that. I think when I was typing that, I was thinking August. So let's correct that and edit it, so you won't be confused at all. Okay. Friday, September 13th. And that's what I will put here. Friday, September 13th. And put it here as well. September 13th. As you know, August 13th would not be on a Friday anyway, I don't think. So let's correct that. Submit that. Oops, let's try it again. No error. Resend it. Okay, now we go to course home page. We should see that correction. Sorry for that little detour. And now when we look at it, let's refresh it. And let's look at week 6. Okay, so now you see what I said, that the final exam is due Friday, September the 13th, okay, and by 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. And that the term officially ends this Friday the 13th at 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. And if you could, take the time to complete the end of quarter evaluations. You can do that even after the 13th. And then you know my motto, adversity is a springboard to success. So let's take a quick gander at the calendar so you can have it clarified, because I don't want anybody to be confused about when the quarter ends. Let's go over to the calendar, and you'll see it as clear as day. Here it is. So this is where we will be by the time you see this. Your reading assignment due on Monday as usual. Your live lecture, of course, is taking place earlier. And then your initial post due Tuesday, and then you see what I said. The 13th, your reply post, your final exam, and then there is a reminder that the quarter ends at 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time, which means the keyword that I'm going to give you also has to be given as well. And that will be the end of the course. No exceptions, people, because that's the school policy. So now let's go into the module, and let's look at the assignments. I do remind you about the Drugs and Crime Course Guide, which we've been talking about the whole quarter, which provides help. And so then your discussion post deals with methadone clinics, and your initial post, of course, is due on Tuesday. And then your reply post is due on Friday. Okay. It says be sure to include proper citations. You can, like I said again, it's okay if you don't in my classes. And then your final exam consists of multiple choice questions. I cannot tell you how many because that's why they wrote it like that. This is a timed exam, and it's set for 60 minutes. Okay, you can probably almost figure out how many questions based on that. And you'll have one opportunity to complete this exam, and you'll be alerted when you have 30 minutes left. Again, when you have 5 minutes left, 1 minute and 30 seconds remaining. Once your time expires, the grade will automatically be submitted. And then you agree to abide by the academic misconduct policy as set forth in the syllabus. We've talked about that over and over and over. And then, of course, your live classroom lecture point will be due as well, that I will be giving you. And those are the assignments for week 6. So now let's go into the topic that we're talking about today. And go to the lesson content. And again, we're going to talk about this section and this section here. Treatment and relating to opioids and rehabilitation programs. So you should be aware that as we've been saying, probably I sound like a broken record saying this, that opioid addiction is we're at epidemic proportions, and that it is creating changes in lives, and people are abusing opioids in many ways, finding themselves in situations where their lives are totally disrupted, and puts them in a category where nobody wants to be bothered with them. And social support for those seeking help in repairing these relationships and becoming contributing members of society is very important. And it has many psychological and physical challenges, as you've learned from Chasing the Dragon and from previous lectures. It can reach a stage where your body is just craving Gotta have it. And as you know, you'll start maybe with a smaller dose or with something as innocent as painkillers, and then you'll need higher and higher doses of other drugs, and you keep wanting to try to reach the high that you had previously reached. And people find themselves with some very serious problems. And there are health issues such as muscle and bone pain, insomnia, diarrhea, vomiting, cold flashes, and sweating. All of those you've previously heard and understand. Even with the use of prescribed medications, such as bupropion and methadone, though it may lessen the symptoms of withdrawal, but there's still going to be a problem even with methadone. And methadone is controversial because it's almost arguing that you become addicted to methadone and you have to take it daily or visit a clinic daily. And there are clinics all over the place. But what it really does is we always consider it like a Band-Aid thing, because what it does, it results in dealing with the opioid, but it doesn't really free you of it, because if you stop taking it, there you go again. And then it says here, methadone is also detected in opioid drug tests for employment. So it doesn't eliminate the possibility of using other opioids. So it's as I said, it's a rubber. It's like putting a Band-Aid over something that needs to be sewn up. Another argument against methadone is that it postpones what you need to do, and that is abstain and go through full recovery and treatment. And so people, it says, when taking methadone, may not abuse opioids, but their commitment to the actions for recovery become less and less and less. And so, again, the key thing is you have to kick the habit once and for all and build a support network and, as I say, get yourself off of this. And notice what it says here. Some studies indicate that over 70% of people relapse after they stop taking methadone. So after you stop taking methadone, you've got to get to the point where you go through some very intense treatment. Now, you're going to have withdrawals, as you already have discovered from what we've talked about earlier. And this video here, which deals with also heroin, and let's see if I can get this up for you to take a look at here. And then I'll take this headset off. Okay. I think this is if this is not the okay. I have to log in, or I may not have to, because I'm already logged in. I can skip this. Okay, there we go. So let me take off my headset and let's take a look at this. Let's go back to the beginning.
Help everyone explore new worlds and ideas. Support your PBS station.
Tonight on Frontline,
It was like a wave of heroin.
a 2-hour special report.
I lost it all, and it really didn't matter to me as long as I could get home.
Inside an epidemic.
Not putting me in jail.
The radical new approach.
It should not all be seen as a criminal justice problem. It ought to be seen as a public health issue.
The police and social workers on the ground.
People are going to use drugs. Let's make it safe for them until they're ready to do something different.
The personal battles.
Just pain for a while, but this is the thing about treatment. It's not a magic bullet.
And the new face of addiction.
I don't know what this is doing.
Frontline investigates this very different war on drugs.
What can we do differently from sending people to jail?
And if it's working.
You're left with the most fundamental question. Where do you send your kid for treatment?
Tonight on Frontline, chasing heroin.
Tonight's program contains mature content which may not be suitable for all audiences. Viewer discretion is advised.
There are some alarming new numbers out from the CDC showing a dramatic rise in the heroin epidemic.
Painkillers is an expensive habit. Many now turning to a cheaper way to
The number of heroin overdose deaths nearly quadrupled.
It's been creeping up on us for a long time. America's heroin problem.
Sudden rise in heroin overdoses is occurring in cities big.
Overdoses from heroin and other opioids now kill more than 27,000 people a year. And the numbers keep rising.
Authorities say the drug is increasingly making its way to wealthy suburbs and into the hands of young Americans. In the last 12 months, have you done speedballs?
Yes.
Goof calls?
Yes.
Heroin by itself?
Yes.
Last 3 months, have you done meds? Options like And how many times have you overdosed from opiates in your life?
Never.
And how many times have you witnessed someone else overdose from opiates?
3 times. I don't have a cooker. David took my last cooker. Dude, I have some. Here, that's clear.
Christina Block says she first tried smoking heroin when she was a teenager.
When I was 14, I tried heroin, and it just like made everything feel like safe and okay. Did I give you enough food? I think I got really trapped in it because, I mean, I guess I didn't know too much about what addiction was. And it just became so second nature. It consumed me.
She moved to injecting by the time she was 16.
I was friends with this girl who was like 24, and she was shooting up regularly. That's how she did it. And I just was kind of interested in it, and I asked her to hit me one time.
Christina is now 7 years into her addiction.
It's just so insane what this drug like can make you do. Like it literally has a brain and it shares mine, you know?
Right now, how much heroin is in your system?
Probably like $40 worth.
So what determines how much you use?
Well, the number one thing that determines how much I use is how much money I have or how much dough I have.
There are many different reasons why people turn to heroin. 4 years ago, Johnny Bousquet, 38, says he started using to cope with the breakup of his marriage.
I felt like it alleviated the pain that I was going through. It just made me feel like I could make it through that moment. And then eventually I needed it to get through every moment.
Johnny's mother was also a heroin addict. She was gone by the time he was 19.
One day, me and my sister, we found her dead in her room with a needle in her arm. She lost her battle with heroin. And I know she loved us, and I know she really cared about us. And I would always wonder if she loved heroin more than she loved us.
He's now living in a homeless shelter and struggling to stay clean.
At least a few times a day, I think, man, it would be a really good time to get loaded right now. You know, you can pull through and be okay. You even just get a little bit high, that'll be fine. And then something else takes over, and then next thing you know, it's 2 days later. I've just been, like, fighting that, you know. I can't seem to get a hold of myself no matter how hard I tried.
How's the street look to you tonight?
Right here it's pretty quiet. When we turn the corner, it might be different. Are you taking a right, Felix? Yeah. Okay.
As the heroin epidemic has spread, cities and states have grown desperate to come up with solutions. Here in Seattle, beat cops are 4 years into a radical experiment to deal with drug use on their streets.
Oh, cops. Hate that. Okay. All right, I want you to do me a favor. Do me a favor. Stop moving. Stop moving. Okay, good. Because when you're moving, I don't know what you're doing. I get. And when you stop moving, I got you. You're getting well. Not a big deal. All right, I'm not going to jam you up. We got to find out who you are, okay? Cool.
The girl on the ground just is getting well. She's shooting heroin.
Stop crying, babe. We don't care.
These officers are making fewer arrests. They are more likely to refer addicts they encounter to social services.
Where's the syringe? Because I want to be safe.
So you've become a social worker. We are social workers. You are social workers.
Yep.
But
yeah, how many?
Listening to you now, we say, gee, you're taking an awfully gentle approach.
We could not incarcerate these people or arrest our way out of the problem. You would arrest a person, they'd be in jail for 20 or 30 days. They would get sober. They would start using again. We continue to arrest them, and then they would use and continue to arrest.
How much do you use a day? Okay. And how long have you been using? I'm not putting you in jail. Are you a meth user too? Do you have any desire to get on methadone and get well, or? If you have a problem, come and see me at this office. I'll give you something to eat. I'll let you call your parents, sit down, and we'll have a talk. Do you still need that cooker? Okay. Okay.
The most recent surge of heroin abuse has altered our approach to addiction and our views on the war on drugs.
Cops and prosecutors and epidemiologists, public health nurses, county coroners, all of this is being fought by really anonymous folks all across the country, because this epidemic is also the quietest epidemic. It's filled with shame.
Obvious overdose, no history of heroin use, admitted using heroin today. He was found unconscious. They kind of roused him. They're going to start an IV.
You don't have a lot of violence. People die alone in a McDonald's bathroom toilet. And then when the people die, when the kids die, the parents are so mortified, so ashamed that they keep quiet too. And the thing is left to perpetrate and spread.
How did this epidemic begin? It's a crisis 30 years in the making.
Bottom line, too many Americans are suffering from too much pain, and doctors aren't doing enough to stop it. In this country, there was a long-running puritanical attitude towards pain, and it resulted in almost a barbaric undertreatment of pain, particularly when it came to people with cancer and in the terminal stages of cancer.
There had to be better treatment for people with serious pain. So there was a whole effort to open up minds to allow hospice care and good pain management for people with cancer. And then that spread into AIDS, because people with AIDS often had very serious pain problems.
Doctors had long avoided prescribing opioid painkillers for fear of addicting their patients. That changed with the emergence of the hospice movement.
That movement collides with an opportunistic drug company in the form of Purdue Pharma. They see the opportunity to expand the use of these drugs beyond the cancer wards, kind of into the mainstream of medicine. And the drug that becomes the vehicle through which they do that is a drug called OxyContin.
OxyContin is one of America's new prescription wonder drugs. It's a powerful pain.
OxyContin was not really a new drug. The molecule had been around since 1916. What they did is they took this old existing drug and they introduced a time release mechanism into it so that it would be significantly less addictive because it wouldn't be released up front all at once. That's how they pitched it to the FDA.
Purdue Pharma marketed it to doctors who were prescribing drugs for all manner of ailments to common ordinary folks who were not dying of cancer. To them, OxyContin initially looked like a godsend. It looked like this wonder drug, like all of a sudden we can give this and we don't need to prescribe 8 Vicodin a day.
There is no question that the marketing of OxyContin was the most aggressive marketing of a narcotic drug ever undertaken by a pharmaceutical producer. The FDA allowed them to make the claim that because it was a long-acting drug, it might, the stress being on the word might, be less prone to addiction and abuse than traditional drugs. There was absolutely no science to support this idea. Zero.
The undertreatment of pain is a major public health problem.
To urge doctors to treat pain more aggressively, Purdue Pharma launched a series of promotional videos.
The pain that I have basically covers my neck to my feet.
34 million adults suffer from chronic pain.
The company used prominent pain specialists like Dr. Russell Portnoy to ease concerns about addiction.
The likelihood that the treatment of pain using an opioid drug, which is prescribed by a doctor, will lead to addiction is extremely low.
Opioids are safe and effective.
The message in these programs was that real addiction in your patients treated with opioids is exceptionally rare. Less than 1% of patients.
Purdue Pharma managed to persuade a lot of good people with medicine that they needed to dramatically up their prescriptions of opioids. Now, part of the reason they were able to do that is that there was clear evidence there were some people in pain who didn't need to be in pain, and we had underused them. There's no doubt about that. But it's also no doubt about it that they were commercially driven.
By 2001, Purdue was selling more than $1 billion worth of OxyContin a year. Prescriptions for other opioids soared too, for drugs like Percocet and Vicodin.
We went from a country that used almost no opiate painkillers, like in the 50s and 60s, to being a country where we used 83% of the world's oxycodone and almost 98% of the world's hydrocodone. It's a night and day. It's a stunning statistic.
Most of the users were white men and women living in towns and suburbs. Carrie Frazier, a stay-at-home mom living in Kent, Washington, was prescribed Vicodin after the birth of her second child. When her prescription ran out, she wanted more.
I just pursued it. I went to a doctor and I made up an ailment. I said, I have terrible migraine headaches. In order to get more, I got on the phone the next day and said, this one's not working. I think I'm allergic to it. Okay, are you sure? We'll prescribe something different. Before all was said and done with this doctor, he was prescribing me 300 to 400 pills per month.
Highly regarded by patients. They rated him 3.5 out of 4 stars.
Her prescribing physician was a doctor with top credentials.
He was a young doctor. I think he was fairly new in the field, early 30s. For a couple of years, it worked. He never once said, this is a problem.
No one in her family seemed to notice.
She still was functional. She would still have the facade of looking like she was completely together, like the poster child, PTA, mom that everybody looked up to and everybody wanted to be.
During that period of her life, she says she was consuming around 15 to 20 painkillers a day.
It felt that good to me, and it made me feel that comfortable in my own skin. I felt like I was a better mom, a better person, easier to be around. It made me feel like I was functioning on a higher level.
The supply from her doctor remained steady for the next 2 years. But then one day, Carrie ran out of pills.
He was on vacation. Nobody ever told me, now that you're taking these pills, you can't just stop. You're going to get ill. And getting sick was kind of like truth serum for me. It made me want to talk. It made me want to reach out. So I asked my ex-husband to help me.
Carrie's husband confronted her doctor about the dozens of bottles of painkillers he had prescribed.
He said, I thought she was smarter than that. You're going to have to wean her. He scolded me. I left there feeling rather shamed and like I had done him wrong.
Carrie promised to stop, to go cold turkey, but she couldn't.
I began seeking pills in various ways, and it started with going through people's medicine cabinets, the neighbors, people from church, family members, grandparents. I even went to real estate open houses and then asked to use the bathroom. And it calling refills on these medications, calling these automated lines at Walgreens, posing as the nurse from this doctor's office. Please refill this. Go through the drive-thru and pick it up. I'm so-and-so's daughter or friend, and she's sick. I have to pick up her script. No questions asked.
After 2 years of stealing other people's prescriptions, one morning she ran into trouble at Walgreens.
I went to the drive-up window, and the pharmacist said, "This isn't your script. We called the doctor. This is fraudulent." He called the police. They came to the house. "You have small children here? Well, put them on the computer downstairs. We're not going to arrest you if you'll go and turn yourself in." So my neighbor and friend drove me down to the police station, and that became a deferred prosecution. And as a result of that, I went into inpatient treatment.
More and more Americans are ending up in the hospital after overdosing on prescription drugs.
It was a time when the country was waking up to the opioid crisis.
A national epidemic of pill popping so bad it's being called Pharmageddon.
OxyContin was once marketed as something of a wonder drug, one that could stop pain without getting patients addicted. As it turns out, that was a lie and a deliberate one. OxyContin.
In 2007, after a 4-year investigation by federal prosecutors, Purdue Pharma admitted to charges of fraudulent marketing.
They ignored widespread reports of deaths and addiction.
The company paid $600 million in fines and settlements. In a statement, Purdue Pharma said they accepted responsibility and, most significantly, reformulated OxyContin with abuse-deterrent properties. Their most prominent medical consultant, Dr. Portnoy, publicly expressed regret. By 2009, a newly appointed team at the Office of National Drug Control Policy was coming to grips with the magnitude of the opioid crisis.
You know, all you had to do really was pick up the paper and just see every day, there was a story about people dying or, doctors getting arrested for writing pill mills, those kinds of things.
Clinics that will prescribe just about anything.
The new deputy drug czar, Dr. Tom McClellan, was poring over data on overdoses, but it was outdated.
One of the problems is you don't get the results of opiate overdose for 3 years. There's a lag of 2 years. So it's like driving by looking in the rearview mirror. Okay.
So you knew that there was a rise in the prescription rates.
Well, we did realize that the statistics had already started to really go way, way up.
At the Centers for Disease Control, Director Tom Frieden was looking at health data for the whole country.
I was just stunned. The only thing that was getting worse was deaths from opiates. Everything else was getting better. But then I began looking through the whole of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, and I was seeing the impact of opiates everywhere. Birth defects, neonatal abstinence syndrome, hepatitis C, and HIV. This is an unusual and horrific phenomenon.
It's an emerging problem.
Frieden started raising the alarm.
Fatal overdoses, and we need to get a much better handle.
One day in the spring of 2010, Frieden approached an official at the drug czar's office, Dr. Keith Humphreys.
We meet privately, and he says, "You guys in the White House need to start using the word epidemic for opioids. This is an epidemic. Look at all these people dying. This is like the early parts of AIDS. We need to really ramp up concern about this. It's killing lots of people."
The team at the Office of National Drug Control Policy decided it was time to get President Obama's attention.
We said that it was going to be an even bigger problem.
Did you see that that was going to lead to a rise in heroin addiction?
Oh, yeah. I mean, prescription opiates is heroin prep school. The inevitable thing is there's going to be a reduction in the availability of those. Once that happens, you have to turn to something, and that is going to be high-potency street opiates, heroin.
And did you take those warnings to the White House?
Yes, we did.
And
thank you for sharing. I mean, they get warnings all the time about dire things that are going to happen. Some happen, some don't. It was not the main thing for the Obama administration. They had a few other tiny problems, like the Affordable Care Act, America's still reeling from the bank collapse and real estate collapse and all that. Little things.
One year later, the White House called for more prescriber education and additional prescription monitoring. By that time, doctors were writing enough prescriptions a year to give a bottle of painkillers to every American adult. As for Carrie, despite a stint in rehab, she couldn't shake her addiction. 10 years after she first got hooked on opioids, she moved out of her house, leaving her husband and 2 kids. She eventually started a new relationship and began a new life. But then one day, she ran into an old friend from high school.
I said, I'm in recovery. That's how we started talking. She said, I'm supposed to be too. Maybe we should talk sometime. So I went to her house to talk, and instead of having coffee, we smoked a bowl of meth, because that was her drug of choice. And it went from there.
Carrie's addiction was slowly progressing. She would start abusing meth, but would return to opioids.
At the bus stop one day, I started talking to a gentleman, brought it up. I'm looking for opiates. Well, I've got something for you. Walked over to the honey pot. You know, the green temporary bathrooms at construction sites. I went in there to do it. I came out, did you like it? I loved it. Get me some more. So he did.
Carrie, like some opioid addicts, had moved on to street heroin. It wasn't long before she began living in this house, now renovated, with 20 other addicts.
And I wound up living in a house down at the bottom of the hill. Oh, man. The animals weren't taken outside to relieve themselves. We were living with animal feces. It was a very filthy environment. And before long, that was my home.
It was gross. It was never like a place I've ever been before. And I was seeing people pretty much overdosing in other rooms. It was like people's eyes were rolling in the back of their heads. And it was shocking to me because she would just act as if that wasn't happening when she was hanging out with me. Like, how's your day been? You know, and this was the point where I was like, you're not even trying anymore. You're not even trying to pretend that this isn't happening anymore.
Addiction is weird. It gets very weird. During that time, I lost it all. And it really didn't matter to me. As long as I could get high, it was okay.
A heroin boom. I have never seen the amount of heroin that's on the streets of America today. Mexican drug cartels are flooding the U.S. with cheap heroin.
As painkillers opened the way for heroin, Mexican drug suppliers were ready. They would take the epidemic to a whole new level, bringing cheap and highly addictive heroin to towns and suburbs across America.
They're selling heroin as if it were pizza. They were the first drug trafficking group to understand that the pill market was essentially priming the heroin market.
A quiet, unsuspecting neighborhood was the perfect cover for a cartel.
Wherever there was a town that had a lot of pill users, they would set up a store there. They call it store.
$1 billion drug empire.
And what you need is a large community of pretty well-to-do kids with money to buy the dope, with cell phones to call the dealer, with cars to go get the dope, and private bedrooms to shoot it up.
Teenagers in middle-class and wealthy suburbs now had easy access to black tar heroin. Kids like
Mary was a born athlete. By the time she was about 13 or 14, she could throw a pitch about 65 miles an hour.
One pitching instructor that had her for a while named her the Rocket. Everybody knew who Mara Williams was. Everyone.
Mara appeared to have the happiest of childhoods, full of privileges. Ballet lessons, piano, a close-knit family.
Her early childhood was just ideal.
We lived in a beautiful bedroom community in Seattle. I had a great job. We were a very tight foursome. My husband and I and our 2 children. It was a great middle America life. Very happy.
Her mother was a local news anchor. Her father was a stay-at-home dad who doted on his girls.
Our children went to good schools. The neighborhood was safe. We never locked the door. Mara was a very happy child.
But by the time she reached middle school, Mara was struggling.
A lot of anxiety, a lot of depression. By this time, she'd been diagnosed with ADHD. It was clear she had some eating disorders issues. We were just trying to find the right mix of therapy, meds.
Mara, how old are you this year? 13.
Mara was also self-medicating.
What happened a couple days before?
I snuck out and drank alcohol, and then I slept at a boy's house.
She started experimenting with marijuana and alcohol.
You're turning into a dog.
But I always kind of kept a close eye. I was looking under the bed. Are there bottles? I didn't know. I was always looking.
Careful, a hole in the tree.
I think it was making her bed or something. I found a locket. And I opened it. I thought, oh, this is interesting. And out poured white powder. It was cocaine.
They found a highly regarded treatment center out of state that cost them $40,000 out of pocket. The program they chose followed a model of strict abstinence. Mara spent 90 days in intensive rehab, 3 times longer than the average patient's stay.
We didn't think 90 days was going to be long enough, but we chose the best place we thought we could for her, where she'd have the best chance of success.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you.
She was clean for a while. She looked good. She looked healthy. She seemed determined to live more responsibly. And for a long time, she did pretty well. But this is the thing about treatment. It's not a magic bullet.
The program didn't work. A few months after Mara got out, she started using OxyContin. Her mother found out after Mara was caught stealing pills. But that was only the beginning. One day, Mara's father got a call.
I was at work one day and I had one of her friend's fathers calling me frantically. And he said, my daughter and your daughter were using heroin.
She was a junior in high school, and she was caught in the bathroom cooking heroin. And I was like, oh my God. I had no idea. They'd gone to heroin. So when we talked to her about it, she didn't deny it. She goes, I'm in trouble. I need help. She says, can I go to detox tonight?
After another 30 days in rehab, Mara came out finally ready to embrace sobriety. She went to AA meetings regularly, worked hard at school, and delighted her family when she finally graduated from high school.
I'm Sarah. First off, I gotta thank you guys. I definitely wouldn't be here without you. You guys gave me a fourth chance. And I'm really, really incredibly grateful to you guys. Thank you. And my beautiful family, look at all this.
At one of her AA meetings, she met someone.
She just kind of knocked me off my feet when I first saw her, you know. She just had this thing about her that some people have, and she was able to get through my barriers, you know.
Jordan Zuloff was just back from his 3rd tour in Iraq and was trying to kick his addiction to heroin.
We're both into metal music, punk music, you know, activism. We're just really like-minded in that way and just kind of goofballs together. We just had a good time. We were both sober and living that life. It's like at the forefront of our relationship and what we did, you know. A lot of it was based around that, being sober and being healthy and proactive.
They were both in AA. They were working their AA program together. going religiously, working the 12 steps. She'd say, I really like sobriety. I like the way I feel. I can't believe how clean and clear my brain is. She was just doing a great job. She did a great job.
But heroin is considered one of the most addictive drugs. Up to 60% of addicts relapse in the first year after treatment. Mara managed to stay off for a year and a half.
Penny told me, she's like, I think Mara's using again. I was like, there's no way. There's no way that can be happening. You know, I didn't believe it. And then I asked her, she's like, yeah, I did once. You know what I mean? But I'm like, but you're not continuing to do that. You're gonna get help, and we're gonna deal with this, right?
6 months later, Mara was dead.
Found the needle in the sink, the water running, and her dead on the floor. Had to have happened really fast.
She was clean for a long time, and you know, and that's what happens. You pick up again and take a hot shot, and that's that. You know, it's too much, and you die. It happens all the time. You know, she's an amazing girl. I love her very much.
How do you remember her?
As a big part of my soul, my heart. She's always there, you know? Yeah. And a grenade, you know? She was an explosive person, you know?
Longtime Seattle media figure Penny Legate did everything she could to help her daughter break the grip of heroin.
Former local high school football player who became another local family buried a teenage daughter today.
Her son was an Eagle Scout on extreme head college.
When people started to overdose, the group that got hit pretty hard were young college kids, white kids, high school kids, kids in suburbs were dying of this, not the sort of stereotypical heroin user.
Always at the top of her class, she became addicted to heroin. 2 young people have found dead of an overdose.
90% of new heroin users are white. A rising number are middle class or wealthy.
Because the stereotypes turn out to be so very important to people's attitudes towards drug use and the war on drugs and drug users, this has been a really huge development.
Drug addiction is an epidemic, and it is taking too many of our young people.
We have a huge problem, and I think the big reason is because we're not treating it like the disease that it is. It's been true throughout American history that when drugs penetrate into the middle class, particularly the white middle class, politicians panic much more than they do when the drugs are concentrated in poor neighborhoods. And it's not fair and it's not right, but that's the kind of country that we're living in.
We need much more in the way of treatment.
It's heartening for me to see how this nation is reacting to the heroin problem. We're now seeing around the country where we are coming up with public health responses to it and dealing with the underlying problems that cause that addiction in the first place.
Not to be too glib, but isn't that because a lot of white kids are doing heroin?
I mean, I think that's certainly a factor, you know.
Richard Pryor said about cocaine that it's an epidemic now because white people are doing it.
Well, you know, when things seep into the majority community, the nation pays a greater amount of attention than when it is confined to minority communities. And so, yeah, there's an element of truth. There's an element of truth to that.
One community hit hard by this new heroin epidemic gripping the nation is a short ferry ride from Seattle. Bremerton. It's the kind of place where the epidemic took hold early on. A working class town, home to 40,000 residents, a Navy shipyard, and a mayor who decided to try a different approach to the epidemic. It all began when Mayor Patty Lent received some alarming news. The town's bathrooms were clogging up with used needles.
We had to install sharps containers at all of our public buildings. We're trying to keep those syringes from getting into our parks, on our streets, and in our landfill.
It was like a wave of heroin. I mean, we just started to see it wash over this county.
You couldn't walk down streets in Bremerton without finding hypodermic needles laying in the gutters and laying in the parks and on the children's equipment, and it was kind of shocking for everybody. It used to be nobody knew somebody that was on heroin. Then all of a sudden I knew 50 people that had an issue with heroin. Trevor Mercer, a Bremerton native, says he began using painkillers when he was 18 and moved to heroin because it was that much stronger.
When I first started doing heroin, I was already taking pills, and I knew it was the same thing. An opiate is an opiate, you know. I was just smoking it at first. It wasn't until I injected it that I realized why heroin is better than taking a pill. And by better, I mean worse.
But when his girlfriend got pregnant with their first child, he decided he needed to find a way out. He had already tried to quit, and it hadn't worked.
I went through the 12-step program and everything like that. It's just not worked for me. So I knew I needed to do something because I certainly couldn't take care of myself. How am I supposed to take care of somebody else? And getting on the methadone clinic kind of just fell into my lap. And so I figured I'd give it a shot.
But finding a nearby methadone clinic was another story. Trevor would have to wake up at 3:45 a.m., drive to the nearest clinic, and get back to work by 7:30.
The thing with methadone is you take it once a day instead of doing heroin like 5 or 6 times a day. It certainly worked in my favor ever since. It's been a long time since I've even seen a syringe.
Methadone is a tightly restricted drug. It was originally formulated as a painkiller, but it was embraced in the 1970s as an effective way to treat heroin users in withdrawal.
Every physician can prescribe methadone for pain. They cannot prescribe it for addiction medicine. That's what methadone clinics can do. The concept is, if you walk into a methadone clinic, you get your dose for the day so you don't go into withdrawal. You can go to work, you can achieve your daily functions, and you're not out doing things like stealing or prostitution of yourself just to earn the next hit.
Dr. Scott Lindquist was the head of public health for Kitsap County. Alarmed by the growing epidemic, he approached the mayor about starting a clinic.
He told me that people were living normal lives by having a treatment that they had to go in and have it administered. He said that with anyone that had a normal life that had gone through an addiction to heroin, I think I didn't realize how much controversy would be generated. I didn't look at any other unintended consequences. So we moved forward in that capacity.
Robert Parker, who owned a shop in the area, woke up one morning to the headline in the local paper.
Methadone clinic coming to Bremerton. I went, what? Wait a minute, we can't put in a facility that's selling meth or giving meth out.
Josh Farley, a reporter at the Kitsap Sun, wrote the article.
For a lot of people, it's really hard to wrap your mind around words like opiate and methadone maintenance. And then the very base of the word, methadone, I think probably confused some people thinking that it's methamphetamine.
And then the telephone started ringing. My email, people coming to my office, and they were there in droves.
The most vocal were shop owners next to the proposed site. One day, the owner of a gas station approached Robert Parker.
He said, look, he said, they're not telling you the truth. He said, I own 2 gas stations in Seattle. They're right next to methadone clinics. He said, these things are destroying our neighborhoods over there, and the police can't get it under control right now. He said, I invite you to come over to Seattle for a day. And he says, and let's go visit. And I did. And I spent the entire day photographing what was happening. We had a
lot of drug-addicted people that were just kind of hanging out. There were taxis coming from all over the region at the taxpayers' expense. It was absolutely shocking.
Good evening, City Council. Good evening, Maryland.
When the City Council held hearings to discuss the matter, dozens of people came to express one idea: not in my backyard.
For you tonight to stand strongly opposed for this methadone clinic coming in.
Main concern is the safety.
Loitering, theft, vehicle prowl.
They came to all the council meetings, and they said, not in my backyard, but this is the worst place that you could ever have a methadone clinic.
I don't lack empathy for people that need treatment, but I am concerned about the impact.
Bars on my windows and more security.
Fear trumps science most of the time.
Overdosing of methadone.
And it's easy to be scientific, but when you're scared, how easy is it really to listen to that science?
Good evening. Welcome to the Bremerton City Council meeting for Wednesday.
And it went on for months. Even the location in Bremerton's red light district was not acceptable to the community.
I would not put it in the middle of a problem area where you have easy access to drugs, prostitution, bars.
I thought it was kind of funny because we're talking about a block with sex shops, porno theaters, late night bars. But I also wanted to say that, I'm a human and I'm normal enough. I have a family. I do probably the same stuff they do.
Do you have any more comments? Anybody really feel?
Trevor Mercer felt compelled to testify.
Hi, my name's Trevor Mercer. Ever since I've been on methadone, I've come farther in life. I own my own home. I raised my son. I don't have any issues anymore as far as going backwards. Methadone treatment is what helped.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mercer.
But the loudest voice against the clinic was having second thoughts by the time he testified.
When that thing hit the front paper, I was upset. And admittedly, now I didn't understand the whole issue. And I think
Robert Parker was dealing with a crisis in his own home. His son was slipping into drug addiction.
It tore through our family. The first few times we went running down to the jail, paid whatever the bail was, but it got worse. And he slid down further, and finally, when we wouldn't bail him out anymore, we lost him. He quit communicating with us completely. I was extremely conflicted about the clinic. I had my son. And at that point, I knew that he may be one of the patients that needed it.
I will call to order the special meeting of the Bremerton City Council.
Despite his reservations, it was too late. The long campaign against the clinic had swayed Bremerton's council. In 2011, the council put a halt to the methadone clinic. Meanwhile, the epidemic continued to spread.
The epidemic today is so much greater than it was back then. The degree today that we have drug addiction is more than I ever anticipated.
You have people who are hooked and they have no option for treatment. Like in many communities, we see the same people go in and out of jail. There is little that we seem to do as a society to eliminate that revolving door. And I see people who have died because of this.
And there was a cost to that fight. We lost the methadone clinic, which this community needs. What we didn't have, and we got the hard way, was the education along the line. And that it's been a hard lesson for all of us.
Since the city council decided against the methadone clinic, more than 40 people have died of overdoses in Kitsap County.
There are nearly 200,000 inmates in federal prisons, and almost half are drug offenders.
The nonviolent offenders sentenced for drug crimes. That's 1 in 110 adults behind bars.
For many heroin addicts, Rehab begins not in a methadone clinic, but in a county courthouse. 1 in 3 people referred to drug treatment come in through the criminal justice system.
Mr. Green is in custody.
Drug courts first appeared in the 1980s as a way to divert low-level drug offenders away from jail and into treatment. The idea caught on.
3 months in a row, the defendant is coming in contact with law enforcement with this drug use.
We have a system that identifies the drug use as a problem and that requires them to stop. And drug courts do a wonderful job. You don't just refer them to treatment. You require them to go to treatment. You got to use that stick to get people in there and get them to stay there so they get well.
The program is designed to closely supervise participants who must submit to frequent drug tests and intensive drug therapy for at least 12 months. In this courthouse in Seattle, defendants must waive their right to a trial if they want to participate in drug court. If they fail the program, they're at the mercy of the court.
If you are not successful with the program, you've given the court the right to find you guilty of the charge beyond a reasonable doubt.
Now, there are other choices in prison, so, I mean, they're kind of between a rock and a hard place. They have given up their right to challenge the evidence. All that happens is the judge reads the police report and then sentences them to the crime.
If they graduate, the charge is dropped.
Drug courts represent in some ways a violation of fundamental human rights, in that people must essentially plead guilty and give up their due process rights in order to participate in drug court.
We're looking at prison. You can't say, gee, I want to change my mind.
But drug courts also represent innovation, experimentation, practicality. They represent the attempt of people who are right there on the street, facing the problem every day, to do something different, not to just keep repeating the same mistakes, to treat people as individuals.
Okay, I had to stop that because it's rather lengthy. So if you want to take the time to look at it, you can find out more, but you begin to see what we've been talking about as far as the opioid issue. Notice that it is now an epidemic, as I said, because it's hit the larger population in the suburban communities rather than not just the urban communities. And so there are these 12-step programs, which I'm not going to go into because they kind of talked about them, but quite honestly, I don't have much confidence in these programs. But you see the drug court program. It is a program that I've participated in as an attorney representing individuals, but as stated in the video, individuals find themselves in between a rock and a hard place, and they're kind of stuck with either getting some help or either going to prison. And we already have discussed this, is that even if you incarcerate a person and you don't resolve their drug problem, which I said is a health issue, they're going to come back out and they're going to be a recidivist, and they're going to go back to doing what they did. And the only thing that's going to stop them ultimately is what you discovered in this video and in Chasing the Dragon last week, that it's going to result in death of these individuals, and that's pretty much how most of them end up. And so it's a very, very, very serious issue, and we need to be cognizant of that fact and recognize that the strategies that are used are, how should I say, maybe not really helping so much. You heard the debate about the methadone clinics in that video. I've shared that with many of you in the discussion posts, and that the communities don't want the methadone clinics. However, the problem does get worse when there's no methadone. But the problem, as I said, with methadone is that it's like trading a drug for a drug. They said that people don't go out and commit crimes when they're on methadone. I disagree with that statement. And the truth of the matter is they can't get to them. And then you noted earlier how people started abusing painkillers. We started talking about that earlier, dealing with oxycodone and all of those different things. The point of the matter is that these drugs, these painkillers, and increased use, and you see even how the drug company Pharma, it was depicted in this video, got caught with their hand in a cookie jar and basically giving information out just to make a profit. And they had to dole out a lot of money, but how can you say that the money can help those individuals who have lost loved ones, who have lost children? You saw that news reporter, all the money, $40,000 she spent to send her daughter away, came back only to find herself more involved in it, and then she eventually OD'd. And so the bottom line is this, good people, is that it is really, really, really a challenge for those of us in the law enforcement field, but we need to be aware of the aspect that this thing has reached. As the Center for Disease Control uses the term now, epidemic, and we've talked about that from the outset in this course. And so it is problematic. And so I want to end tonight's session by giving you a key word, and that is methadone. That's the key word that you give to get your points. I hope that you guys have enjoyed this course from the perspective, as I represented at the beginning, that you're going to really be educated about things that are happening around you that you may be oblivious to. But if you notice that as it begins to hit more and more families, people adjust their positions based upon that position, that thing taking place. And so it is a serious problem. And law enforcement, as I shared in previous weeks with the diversion programs, attempting to have individuals to come in and get help without catching a case. And the last part here in that drug court program, that you heard the judge basically say that you'd have to plead guilty, and that if you go through the program, then you've waived your rights. And so, as the professor said in the law school, and I agree with him, you have waived your rights. And so what happens is that these individuals are between a rock and a hard place. And so the point of the matter is that this is all occurring because of the epidemic level that we're in. And so with that, I'm going to say good night. I hope to see some of you in my other classes as you pursue your career in criminal justice. And I've enjoyed having each and every one of you. And if you need me after this course, feel free to reach out to me, as many students have, and I'll be happy to provide a referral or something to help you as you move further in your career as criminal justice experts. So I'm going to say good night and have a good break. Hope to see you soon down the road. Bye.